look at Jean Silva and I look at Arnold Allen, I still think they're young in their careers in terms of damage, right? Like they've been in fights, but they've dominated. Even when you win, your hand swells up and your leg swells up, you know. But when you take those beatings, when, you know, Diego Lopez has you mounted and cuts you up for a while, I like to say Arnold Allen's toughest fight, I think he took against Max Holloway. They went, you know, 5 rounds. I think the edge goes to.
Christopher de Santiago with MMA On. Today I'm joined by the former Strikeforce and WEC lightweight champion of the world, Mr. Gilbert Melendez. El Nino, how's it going today, man?
It's great, man. Thanks for having me on today. You know, it's the end of the year and, you know, great 2025 and looking forward to 2026.
Awesome, man. I guess, can you talk to me a little bit more about your last fight night event at the Tech? You know, we saw 9 finishes. What did you make of the event, Gilbert?
Really proud of the event. It's Fight Night 4, you know, in San Jose. Really, our goal is to, you know, create a platform for the Bay Area mixed martial artists. We have some studs out here, and, you know, sometimes there's not enough platforms for them to perform on. You know, they do a pivot, they go back to their jobs, you know, and, you know, our goal is to create that platform to develop that next fighter. And we also have some people who've been doing really well in the Bay internationally, so we're trying to highlight them. So back to the card, we had some of those studs on there, like Matt Baker, Eddie Abasolo. These are guys who have been competing internationally, representing the Bay Area. So it was nice to bring them back home and give them their roses, you know. And Matt Baker fought Moses Marietta in our main event in Muay Thai, high-level Muay Thai. Both guys put on the show, toe-to-toe in the phone booth, trading punches and elbows. Really happy to see that. Eddie Abasolo doing his thing as a Muay Thai fighter. You know, he fought, we call him Sauce Marley, but James Brudery, who's a local Bay Area guy, maybe not known internationally, but to have 2 local guys fight each other is great. And some really good up-and-coming MMA talent. Bobby Cerronio III. Kyle Clark fought Chuck Campbell at light heavyweight. Great fight. We have Gavin Hollonen. He's coming up as well. I rambled a lot, but man, I really enjoyed the fights. Great performances and everybody. We kind of create that stage like it's a big stage, and people want to take a risk and people want to show out. Some people don't want to do that at local shows, but we kind of bring that out of them.
Awesome, Gilbert. Well, it's awesome to see a card, you know, full of big names like Bobby Cerronio from Bellator, Moses Marietta. I've seen him before. And then Kung Lee Jr., is that Kung Lee's son?
Yeah, you hit it spot on right there. So, you know, we do amateur Muay Thai, amateur MMA at the beginning of the card to get things going. We do the pro card. We had our 8-9 fights. And then we do a little bit to close out with some really good up-and-coming amateurs. And one person we want to highlight was Kung Lee Jr. So Kung Lee Jr. is 1 amateur fight in. He had a 2nd amateur Muay Thai for us. And, dude, he's a 155-pounder, and the kid's a monster already. And, I mean, you know, he's Kung Lee's son. So, of course, he has, you know, that punch and power, that dynamic striking, and he's making a name for himself, and he's really proud of doing that.
Mm-hmm. What's it like to work with Scott Coker, you know, a legend of the business, a decade after your Strikeforce run?
Well, it's awesome. You know, he's now, like, he was my promoter. Now I feel like he's my coach, my sensei in this promoter quest for myself. You know, I'm trying myself to become a recognizable promoter. So just being with Scott, you know, he has the infrastructure, he has the knowledge, he has the connections. It makes this process so much easier. You know, the first fight I focused on promoting more. You know, as we go on, I'm on the 4th show with him and taking a lot more on, you know, matchmaking, finding sponsors, and, you know, being able to have Scott coach me along the way. And every time there's a situation, I always call him the solution man. You know, instead of like addressing a problem, he's always like, what's the solution? I like that approach to everything in life, you know, and he's a great guy. He's wise. He loves the athletes. He loves the fighters. When I was fighting for him, I felt like it was more of a partnership than I was like this employee and this fighter that had to do whatever he said. And he always would hear me out. He believed in me. So it's great to work by his side in this promoter role opposed to the fighter role.
Mhm. And I did want to ask you about Strikeforce. You went 11-1 in the promotion, 7 title fight wins. You avenged your only loss to Josh Thompson, I believe, twice over. I gotta ask, is Gilbert Melendez the greatest Strikeforce fighter of all time?
Man, I think on paper you have a strong argument right there. I think you have a paper on paper. It's a strong argument. There were some really great fighters to come out of there. So, being able to say I was one of the best Strikeforce fighters, if not the best. You're talking about Cormier was in there. You're talking about Rockhold. You're talking about Ronda Rousey, Josh Thompson, Jacare, Tyron Woodley, Jake Shields, Nick Diaz. Some of the greats, were all in Strikeforce. So, I definitely was a workhorse for Strikeforce, and that was definitely my time, and I got to work out there. So my numbers were high out there at that time.
And you fought so many killers, Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis, Edson Barboza. The list goes on. I guess, is there a UFC fighter that you wished you would have fought, but you didn't get the chance to?
Let me think. I think back in my day, you have goals of who to fight, and when you're young, you're watching, the best of the best, and you see someone like Takanori Gomi was the number one 155 pounder because there was no 155 pounders in the UFC at that time, right? So, because they got rid of the weight class. So at that time, like Takanori Gomi was my guy. But during my run at 155s, when I believe I was the number one fighter in the world, when I was beating a lot of people up, Gray Maynard and Frankie Edgar were fighting each other 3 times, and this is when I'm beating like Shinya Aoki, and this is when I'm beating, Jorge Masvidal. It's Frankie Edgar fights, I think, Gray Maynard 3 times, and he fights BJ Penn 3 times, and then he fights Benson Henderson. So during that whole time, I feel like I was number one, Frankie was number one, but by the time I fought for the title, Benson just beat him for the title. So my first fight in the UFC for the title against Benson Henderson. So I like to say that I really wanted to fight Frankie Edgar in my prime when he was the champion. I thought at that time I was the best in the world, and I wish I could have challenged myself against him, but I happened to be at Strikeforce at that time. So because of that, I wanted to fight him. No other reason. I think Frankie's an amazing guy, an amazing person, an amazing champion. Just that timing, I was like, I was there for him versus Gray Maynard, and I was confident. I had convictions at that time, like every fighter should, that I could beat them both.
That would have been a great fight, Gilbert, for sure. I did want to ask you about your retirement fight as well. You take 2 years off from Jeremy Stevens, or near 2 years off, and then Jeremy Stevens to Arnold Allen. Can you talk to me a little bit about the long layoff and going into the Arnold Allen fight? I guess what was going through your mind, and what can you tell me about that fight?
Yeah, I mean, Arnold Allen's a tough up and comer. I'm on, I'm towards the last fight of I'm on the last fight of my career. You don't want to call it your last fight. You're banged up. You've been doing it for a long time. You lost your edge a little bit. You're not willing to take 2 to give 1. You're more like, I'm going to block and make sure I don't get knocked out. Not that you're scared. You just kind of lose your edge and become a little bit more conservative. You're not willing to roll the dice the same. I know a lot of fighters see this and they don't really understand at that time, but a lot of the greats like Dominic Cruz, I don't want to mention, or just like we saw Henry Cejudo, unfortunately you lose your last 4 or 5 fights, because you're out there fighting studs. So at that point, I'm not trying to be the number one person in the world. I'm trying to get as many paychecks for my family and cash in as much as possible for my family. Maybe not the best mindset for a fighter at that time, but I'm fighting for my family at that moment. There's a moment in the beginning where you'll fight for free. I'll fight for free. I just want to prove I'm the best. And then you're a prize fighter. Oh, you are the best. And then there comes a point where you're not the best. And you're like, listen, why am I here if I was here to be the best? Well, I have a family. I have a daughter. I have kids. I'm getting the biggest paychecks of my life. And I'm not even the best fighter that I was, So you got to cash out. So that's your mindset. You're still down. You still want to fight. But when you have that mindset, you're not the same fighter, and you're kind of busy. So, that was kind of it right there. Not my best performance. Wish I had more. Arnold Allen's a sav. He was super fast in there. I still think I own the center of the ring, the octagon. Most guys stick and move on me. If they try to bang with me, I still feel like I can have a lot of success there. But Arnold Allen's a stud, and that was that was the mindset towards the end of it all.
Mhm. And he fought a very technical fight against you. You know, he's one of the better boxers in the division. Going up against a guy like John Silva, do you think he gets past John Silva at UFC 324?
That's actually a great question, right? You want to see that fight. Those are both guys who really have a little bit lower mileage, and they've been in some battles, right? Like John Silva just went into his first war where he actually lost and got cut up and is bleeding. Like that's his first time he's ever been that way, right? You gotta like towards the end, you're doing 25-minute fights all the time. You're pissing blood, you're bruised up, you have five of those beatings, right? And then you're going in. And I look at John Silva and I look at Arnold Allen. I still think they're young in their careers in terms of damage, right? Like they've been in fights, but they've dominated. Even when you win, your hand swells up and your leg swells up, but when you take those beatings, when, Diego Lopez has you mounted and cuts you up for a while, it starts wearing more. So I guess my point being is both these guys have plenty of mileage to go. I like to say Arnold Allen's toughest fight, I think he took against Max Holloway. They went, 5 rounds. I think he took some lumps on that one. Long story short, I think it's going to be an exciting fight. Both guys are dynamic. I think the edge goes to Silva in the power. But Arnold Allen's fast and he's crafty. And, I think he did a really good job. Who else did he fight? The Georgian guy.
Giga Kadze?
Yeah, Giga, the Giga kick, right? Like he pressured Giga really well. And, a lot of people don't pressure Giga because they're going to walk into that kick. So, man, now that I'm assessing it, you got two really durable athletes who are probably going to get after it. And I think we're in a treat for a really good fight. But I think the edge goes to Silva. I think Silva was onto something against Diego Lopez, but had a little bit of a poor judgment, right? I think he made some mistakes, and hope if he grows from that, I think he should be successful. But if he's the Juan Silva that's a little bit reckless and trying to put on a show too much and focus on that and try to be like too aggressive, I think it could work against him.
As a guy who fought for the UFC lightweight title twice, what was your initial reaction when the number one contender Arman Tsarukyan was kind of passed up in the title shot conversation?
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised, right? I've been in the sport for a long time, and the number one fighter is not really the number one fighter. I've learned we're not only in the fight business, we're in the entertainment business. I also know, a lot of fighters in a certain position feel very confident, like they're the boss, and they have the right to speak up, but also your bosses and your partners have a right to react. So there's a lot of chess being played behind closed doors. And, you want to react a certain way. You want to push a fight back a certain way. You want to do things a certain way, and you want to be a business partner a certain way, then you're going to get certain reactions. And I don't want to call them repercussions, but you're going to get certain reactions, and you're going to be perceived a certain way. And you just got to make your decision. It might have been the best decision ever for Arman to pull out of this fight. It might have been the worst decision, but he made that decision because he needed it, and I'm happy for him, but there's always repercussions, and I'm not sure these are the repercussions, but, these things happen. I'm not surprised.
Who do you favor in Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett?
Man, I'm really excited for that. I'm one of the I'm a Paddy the Baddy fan. I'm a Paddy the Baddy fan. My young daughter loves Paddy the Baddy. The young generation
Nice.
They love Paddy the Baddy. I love his song. I love that he dances. I love his whole I just like his personality, right? Like you don't have to be this tough fighter. You can just be like who you are and go out there and get after it. And he's still a tough animal. I picked him against Chandler, I was like, dude, no, I knew it. Maybe it's easy to say in hindsight now, but I picked him definitely against Chandler. Some people they're not sure. And, I think he has a really good fighter IQ. I think he has really good tenacious grappling. I know his striking isn't super appealing. Like I don't know if his striking is that good, but his IQ is good, right? Like he knows how to not get hit, and maybe he's not moving perfectly yet and boxing perfectly yet, but he makes really good decisions. And I don't know, maybe I'm just I love Gaethje too, but I don't know, for whatever it is, I like to see the grappler. I like the grappling's coming back. I think Paddy does a good job of grappling. He's tenacious and both lovable dudes. But yeah, rooting for, I think Paddy gets it done with the takedown. I think Paddy gets it done with the takedown and the grappling on there and shows some durability and surprises some people. But I think he's gonna have to take some lickings to get that takedown.
Hmm. Awesome, Gilbert. And last question for you. I guess what do you make of the current landscape of MMA right now? I feel like there's not that many options with Bellator being bought out by PFL back in 2023.
Yeah, definitely interesting time for mixed martial arts and MMA, right? But I've been around this sport and I've been around this world for a long time to know that there's ups, there's downs, there's ups in the whole world and the economy and even in the fight game. And there was times when Affliction was popping up, Elite XC strike. I mean, it was just a great time, and then it consolidated, and then you see other things coming up again, the Bellators, the PFLs, and things run their courses right now. So it is extremely going to be a tough time for fighters, right? Not as many places to stop around, But with that, you see really cool things emerge too. New things happen. Bare knuckles coming up. You had karate combat. You have dirty boxing. You have just a new wave of martial arts. We're trying to do something here in the Bay Area. Anytime there's hurdles, there's struggle, there's uncomfort. Anytime there's problems, people persevere. New things come up and great things happen for those who work hard and go for it. So yeah, there might be a temporary slump, but I always look at the light at the end of the tunnel. Something great, I think, will come out of it, even though there's some tough times right now. But currently, definitely not the best time for the fighters. But I think organizations will deliver and will rise because of it. And it's all about timing in life and in this sport. And I think the right timing will be for the right people, and they'll strike and make something out of it.
Awesome, Gilbert. Well, it was really great talking to you, and I'm glad to see that you guys are giving more fighters opportunities at Fight Night, and I hope the best for you guys in the promotion in 2026, man.
Right on, Chris. Appreciate the time. That was fun chatting.